Okay, so I am getting ready to list this file. It's just a basic house shape that you can assemble and put different patterns on, just to make a little cute house. There's some different options here for things you can do if you want to add a little initial to personalize it, or there's a couple of different hanging pieces. You don't even have to use the pieces that are in the file. You can add, I have these little metal stars, just whatever you want to do to accessorize it. But I wanted to show you how I assemble it just to make it easier. So the file comes with the basic house shape, the front, the back, 2 side panels, and the roof section. And on the roof, it's going to meet like this. And then there is a little piece that you can pattern if you want. That's just going to, sort of finish it off nicely. And if you want, you can add, I put these little scalloped pieces in there. You can also pattern those. Or you don't have to have those on this. I didn't add that extra piece. But so you have a lot of options in this file, and we love a file with options. On the side panels, you could use the ones with the cutouts and then the little frame piece. I mean, you could probably even put lights inside of it. The bottom is unfinished, so if you wanted to have the light showing through, there's a lot of options here. I've got a few different window shapes. So let's see, if we wanted to add some windows, you could either use the base piece and pattern that and then put the border on top, or if you want, you can pattern that inner piece. It just depends on how thick you want it. So there's 3 different window shapes, and then there's the same style for the door if you want doors. There's just so many different ways you can do it. You can double it up like that, pattern your base piece and use a frame. There's a lot of options. So let's get started. So if you're not comfortable cutting, some people don't like to cut paper or fabric on their laser. They're worried about fire. I don't ever worry about that. It's never been a problem, but I know some people don't like to do that. So you could always just cut your paper to size and then Mod Podge it down and then just sand off your edges. I will show you how to do that, but we are going to just go ahead and do the paper and the fabric right on our wood and then cut it with the laser. So let me just go grab a board and we'll get started. Okay, so let's get started with adding patterns. I'm gonna probably recreate this one. I love how this glitter paper has sort of a roof pattern. So I'll just recreate this one. So what I like to do is cut one full set before I start patterning. I just like to know what the sizes are. So let's see, we'll start with the front. So you can use papers or fabric. I love to use this fabric. I'm not even sure where I got this from, but I use this a lot. I'm probably going to be looking for some more soon. So what I do is just kind of get an idea of how big I need it. Cut a piece that will be to size. I cut it a little larger. Okay, and I want my back piece to be a different pattern. So one thing about papers I really love this polka dot paper. It's a little worn looking. I love it, but it's very thin. And thin papers just don't work as well as like a cardstock weight or fabric. So I'm going to use the fabric instead. And I really just need it the same size. I'll cut a piece of that. All right. I could probably trim that, but it's fine. Just clean this piece up a bit. So that's going to be my front and my back. And the square, the perfect square pieces are the roof pieces. So I'm going to cut 2 of those. Actually, I could just cut 1 long piece. I kind of like Mod Podging smaller pieces, so I'll cut these individually. That's 1 roof. Two roof pieces. And then, what did I use? I used this floral paper for my side panels. So to attach these to my board, I use Mod Podge gloss. The reason I use the gloss variation of this is because I will also apply a thin layer on top. And when you cut your piece in the laser, if you get any residue or a little bit of browning around the edge, you can easily just wipe it away with this gloss. So let me show you. And I'm just choosing the basic sides. I do have, like I mentioned in the file, some pieces that, you know, have the little window sections. You could pattern that, and also, if you wanted, you can either paint or pattern the little border piece, but we're just gonna do the basic one. So let's get a brush. Okay. Let me make sure you can. So I am just going to take some Mod Podge and apply it to my board. You want kind of, you know, medium coverage. You don't want it too light, and you don't want an excessive amount. I'm gonna put my fabric on and smooth it out. Make sure it's sticking really well. You don't have any air bubbles or excess under there. And then, like I said, I'm just going to apply another layer on top. It helps really adhere it to your board. This is 1/8 inch MDF, but you can use wood. I really do recommend sticking with the 1/8 inch though, so that everything fits together. Okay, We'll let that start drying. I'm not really exact with this. It's fine. I think I used a little too much on the top. It's okay. It's just going to take a little longer to dry. I only let it dry for 10 minutes or so until it kind of feels dry on the board. You can use a credit card for this, or if you have like a Cricut smoothing tool, whatever you have. I just use my fingers most of the time. So one thing is, when I have a paper with glitter on it, I don't go over the top really. I don't want to take away that shine. So, which sometimes the Mod Podge will dull that. Make sure there's no threads. I don't want these threads to cause like a lump underneath. I'll probably cut those. I am going to go just around the edges just to make sure it's really stuck well. The Mod Podge dries pretty quickly. That's why I don't do my whole board at once. I prefer to go piece by piece so that I have more control and make sure it's all really sticking the way it should. I've got a couple little fibers. Just making sure everything's really nice and flat. I'm not really worried about it being perfect. I sand a lot of these edges off, so it's just more about adhesion than, you know, the edges looking completely perfect. Okay. You want to be careful when you're using your fingers too, that you're not leaving finger marks on there. Sometimes I do that. That's why sometimes a credit card will work better. As long as you kind of go back over it and smooth it to make sure you're not leaving any really solid fingerprints on there. Okay, so the board is ready. I think I might trim some of these fibers. Okay. That's fine. So I'm going to go and cut this, and I'm going to show you on the dashboard how you will move your pieces to cut exactly what you want. Okay, so I let my board dry for maybe 5-10 minutes, and then I placed it in my laser, and I went and opened up both parts of the file. This House 1 file will have your basic shapes. The House 2 file will have your windows, your doors, some different options for, this is the side panel, with the cutouts for the windows, just your different accessories. But you're not limited to using just this one with these 2 windows. You could always, let's see, it's these taller ones that are the side panels. You could always go and just add your window shapes. You've got your base piece and then your border piece. So let's say I wanted to add that window, and you can resize these however you want them. So I would cut this on a plain piece so that I can just paint that. So this is all just different options that you have. But for now, just to get started, I'm going to just do the basic shapes. So I know that these are the roof pieces. Let's move these guys and place our roof. And I usually really like to get a good look at how it's set up, so I'll enlarge that later, but for now I'm just going to generally move the pieces. And we want one back section in polka dot and one back section with this vintagey pattern. So okay, now that I have everything sort of just placed, I'm going to go take a look at how everything looks. Sometimes I want specific parts of a pattern, like I like this daisy in the bottom right hand corner, so I'm going to want that in there. That looks good. And that looks good. My roof, I'm watching the lines to make sure that it's lined up nicely, and you can see this long line is not. So I'm going to turn my piece a little bit just to make sure it's now lined up better. And it's still going to fit perfectly fine. And again, here you can see my line is off because of the way I laid down my swatch. So I'm just going to turn this a little bit and make sure I like the way the lines look on this. And that's better. Okay. We can move our screen. So I will use the bar across the top. I'll keep that patterned. This is my back piece. So I happen to know that the patterning on this, just because I've used it before, is writing backwards on this piece. So I'm going to turn this around just to make sure it's not weird when I assemble it. Just going to turn this, flip this guy. Okay, looks good. Just kind of double check everything, make sure nothing is on my cutting area that I don't want to cut. And I'm just going to go ahead and get started and cut these pieces. Okay, so now that my pieces have cut, I'm going to just prepare them, just sort of distress them a little bit because it's the style that I like. And it's easier to do that before I assemble it. So I'm not going to probably do all of it on camera because it just takes a little bit. I mean, it doesn't take a long time, but you don't really need to hear me sanding. But one little thing, so I just use this little hand sander thing. You can find these on Amazon. They're really inexpensive. And they come with all the different sanding grits. This is just Velcroed on. So the higher the grit, the softer the paper is. And like this one is, this is a 320. This might be the highest one. So let me show you the difference. So this 320 has a very soft grit on it. I would use that for some different things where I don't really want to push and have the edges worn away. I'm going to use a lower grit or a lower number, which is a heavier grit. So this is a 60 and it's a lot rougher. It just makes it easier for actually there's a 600. It makes it easier for sanding away those edges because I don't want this to be a really long job. Just stick it on there. Where's my piece? So I just go along the edges and I want to wear away that paper. I want that kind of white unfinished edge. I'm going to cover that up with some distress inks, but I want it worn away. You do not have to do this. This is just the look that I like. And one more thing, if you are not comfortable cutting paper or fabric on your laser, as I mentioned before, you could just cut these to size, Mod Podge it on there the same way, leave a little bit of an overhang, and then you can use your sanding tool and it will take the edges off so that this will be a perfect fit. But I like just doing it on the laser. It's so much easier. Okay, so I'm gonna pause and go ahead and just do all of these edges. I'm really pretty quick at it, but let me just get all of these done and then I will come back and show you how I distress them. Okay, so I've sanded my edges. A couple things I thought of to mention. So on the pieces that I use fabric on, sometimes you'll get, if you like to wear away your edges, again, you don't have to, you'll get the little fibers that stick up, you know, they kind of fray. If it bothers you, you can just take a little bit of Mod Podge on your finger and just go along and just make sure that they're, if you don't like them sticking up, for me, it doesn't matter. I'm not really going for a really refined look on these. I like them worn and frayed. But if it bothers you and you use fabric, I just go along and just put a little bit of Mod Podge and that'll hold them in place so they're not sticking up and messy. That was one thing I thought of. And also, when you're sanding off your paper or fabric, you want to go in a downward motion the whole way. You don't want to go up. Sometimes I do go side to side, but you can tear your paper. So if you want to keep it kind of a uniformed, worn edge, you just want to go in a downward motion the whole way. Okay, so now that those are finished, I want to add some distressing, some browning. I'd like my edges to be, you know, just have this kind of look. So there's a few different products. I love these distress inks. The small ones are really good for a project like this that's, you want some control. but I also have them in larger sizes. They come in all kinds of colors, pinks and purples. I tend to use a lot of browns. I like this antique linen. I like the walnut. You just want to play with them and see which ones are your favorites. This one is called Vintage Photo. I think I'm going to go a little darker. I'm going to go with this walnut. So I do this first because it's just easier to do it before I assemble. I'm just going to go along my edges. It doesn't have to be perfect. I like it imperfect. Just gonna kind of brush it on all the way around. So what this is doing is grabbing that white worn edge, and it's really applying it thickly there. I love it. And if you have any areas you don't like, you can take a baby wipe. Even though it's a permanent ink, you do have a little bit of time for wiping it away. So that's one option for distressing your edges. You could also use some different products. I like to use this wax, folk art. I usually do use it. Let's see if I have one. Okay. I use like a little finger dauber. Sometimes I'll just use my fingers, but I'll just dab that on, and I like to dab it off too. I don't want it really wet. You can also use a wax. Gives you a little bit more control over where you're going. It's also going to like give you kind of a little bit of shading on your edges as well as the unfinished edge. So all of this is just optional. You don't have to go with this look, but this is what I prefer. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and finish all of my edges and then come back and we will glue our house together. Okay, so now that I've finished all of my edges the way I want them, we're gonna go ahead and glue this together. So I love to use this super glue. This is empty, unfortunately. I also like Gorilla Gel, but this is all I have right now. Hopefully this works. I only have one shot at this, so let's try it. So these pieces, your side panels, are going to go inside of your front and back piece. So what I do is just start one piece. I'm just applying, it doesn't matter, this is on the inside, it doesn't have to be really neat. I'm just applying a line of glue, and I use a piece of parchment paper on my work surface so that I can throw it away. You want to be able to hold it firmly down, and I'm just using my fingers to make sure that that piece is lined up. I'm just going to hold it and let it start setting a little bit. You have a little bit of wiggle room. I hate getting glue on my fingers. I usually wear gloves for this, but I'm just holding it, using my fingers to make sure that I know it's lined up. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. You do have a little bit of flexibility with this. Okay, but you do want your bottom. I'm pushing down hard because I want those bottom pieces. I don't want my house to be uneven at the bottom. So I am pushing firmly down to make sure it's lined up well. Okay, so that is somewhat, it doesn't matter if it's not perfect right now. You do have a little flexibility. That is somewhat glued on there. If I have to adjust it, I still have time for that. And then I'm going to get that other side panel on, applying another line of glue, inside edge, and again just kind of using my fingers to make sure I can feel that it's lined up. I wish I would have put some gloves on. I hate super glue on my fingers, but it's okay. Gonna hold that for a second. And I know you can see that this one is a little off. It's okay. We're gonna be able to move that and get that back piece on there perfectly. Okay, so that is pretty set. My fingers are glued on there. Used a little too much glue. All right, just gonna wipe off any excess. And for my back piece, I'm just gonna go along the two sides. And this is where you have a little flexibility to make sure that everything's lined up. I'm gonna use my fingers and push this apart. I wanna make sure it's really even. I'm pushing down. And I'm just gonna hold it there. Turn it around so you can see. I'm just holding it to let it set. Try not to get my hands glued on it. There might be a better way to do this. This is just the way I do it. I've made a whole bunch of these and they end up perfectly aligned. So that is setting. See, all my edges are lined up perfectly. And again, these houses are not, for me, they're not meant to be perfectly engineered. I like a handmade look. It's okay if there's any flaws, but I do want it, you know, aligned on the sides. I don't want gaps or anything, but this is perfectly done. Okay, so let's do the roof. And with the roof, I kind of just eyeball it. I want to make sure that I have the same overhang on my front as I do on my back. I just kind of do it by feeling. I don't really measure it out. If you like it a different way, you can measure it out if you want. I'm going to do both roof pieces at the same time. So, and also if you want to paint the inside, now would be a good time to do that. You do see a little bit of it when it's assembled. So I would go in and paint that, but had I done it first, I wouldn't have to worry about it. That's up to you. So I'm just going to apply a line of glue along my 4 edges. You don't want to use too much, but you want to use enough. Just kind of a nice, even, thin line the whole way. That's good enough. So again, I am, I'll look at the pieces, make sure I like it. I am just kind of feeling and that looks good. I don't worry that they don't completely meet up. We have a piece to cover that top. hold it there. You have a little wiggle room before it's completely adhered to move things around. I'm just feeling with my fingers to make sure it's lined up really well. Just have to really hold it for a minute. Kind of want to make sure that where it meets is flat, because the little piece that goes on top lays flat. Okay, I think that's good. This is the little extra piece that we cut. I did it in polka dots and I did it in the printed pattern. I think I'm going to use this one. You can decide. I like that. Just going to add some glue to it. And that is just going to sit on top. Just press and hold. And there we go. So that's the gluing. I'm just gonna pause this and let this set for a little bit and then come back and we can finish it up. Okay, so now that our house is assembled, let's talk about just finishing it up. Again, I mentioned painting this inside edge. That would have been easier to do before I assembled it, but it's no big deal. This is just for a sample for you guys. Okay, so one thing I do like to do, if I haven't distressed it enough, or sometimes I want more on the upper part, I like to use these oil sticks. You can just get these at probably Amazon, but I got these at Michael's, I think. So you just, this is optional, but if you peel off, it's got a little hard layer on the top, almost like a little skin. Just peel it off, and I don't put it right on my piece. I use it on, you know, just a piece of paper or some kind of surface so that you can get in there with it. This is walnut brown, but they also have blacks. They have all kinds of colors. So I just use a paintbrush. Actually, this one's dried. I used it the other day and didn't wash it, but it's okay. We'll just use it. I just get some on my brush and I just go in there so that I can get into my, oh, I'm not on camera. Okay, there we go. So that I can get into my corners. And I just add a little extra. Sometimes I like it more heavily distressed than others. It's just a nice way to add some shading. I am all about shading my pieces. Just to add a little bit of extra up here so it's not so perfect looking. You can do that wherever you want to add a little more. All right. That is just one extra little product that I use. So you have a lot of options at this point. The file will include all of these little windows and doors. I didn't put anything on this one. That is totally up to you how you want to complete this. I would maybe pattern this piece. It has a backer, so I could either just pattern the backer and spray paint this and put that on top. These shapes are also supplied as windows. You could add a couple of windows up here. Let's find the matching piece. Again, if you want more height, you could use the backer, the top layer, and the inner piece. Or you could just use the backer in the top piece so it doesn't stick out quite as much. That is totally up to you. Or wait a minute, the frame and the inner piece so it doesn't stick out as much. Totally up to you. You can change the patterns on these. There's just a lot of different ways you could do this. If you wanted to add a couple windows on your roof section, that would be really cute too. Just for the purposes of this video, I'm not adding any of these extra pieces. Also, I wanted to show you, there are 3 different, where's the square one? There's 3 different shapes. Oh, it's way back here. That I'm putting in the file. This would be for putting in this upper section or wherever you want, but I use it on that upper section. And I just think this looks really cute if you want to put a monogram or just a letter on these to personalize them. That's just one way. So another thing I always do on these, I love to add different ropes. I have a lot of these in different colors. I just got these on Amazon. These are like $6 for a huge roll. I've got a bunch of colors. But sometimes I don't want the rope to look so perfect because these are so distressed. I want that a little less refined. So it's really easy to just take a length of this. Do I have scissors? Here we are. So I would obviously cut this a lot longer, but just to show you, I just take a piece of this and unravel it. It also is good for if the rope is too thick. You can decide to use just a few strands so that you still get that color, but it's a lot thinner. That's up to you. I do that with a lot of different ropes. If I don't have the perfect size, like I have this huge roll, but it's a really thick rope. So I don't use this a lot as is, but I'll just cut a piece of it and unravel it so that it's the thickness that I want. Okay. You can decide what color you want. I don't know if this really matches. Let's maybe use this one. So this one I did unravel, and I'll probably use just a half thickness. All right. I just kind of crisscross it, go back and forth. If you want to keep it in place, you could use a small amount of glue on, one of your sides. But I just go back and forth, get it to where I want it. You do not have to do this. This is just what I like to do. So before I tie this, I would decide if I want to hang something from it. This little star I got on Amazon is just a little metal star. It does have a little hole in it, so it's better for hanging. These look really cute on these. Sometimes I'll just put it on there, but of course it bothers me that it has the hole. So I would probably hang it. The ones that I supplied in the file, there is a heart. Where are they? My work surface is so messy right now. Okay, I'll probably pause this and look for them, but let me give you another option. Okay, hang on. I need to clean up this area and find what I'm trying to demonstrate. Okay, so I supplied a flower shape and a heart shape, but you're not limited to these. You could also use like this scallop, or really any shape that you have. These are just the ones that I have in here, but you can use any shapes or any little pieces that you have. That looks really cute. All right, I didn't pattern any of these, so you would want to probably add a pattern or paint them. Have this hanging. So I have one flower that's hanging, and then I have one with no hole in it, and that would be just to string through. This is how I would do it. I mean, you could glue it to the top or whatever you wanted. So that is another option. Really, this part is just about accessorizing your houses however you want to do them. And one thing I forgot to mention, I also have these little scalloped pieces that you could add to the roof if you want to. You absolutely don't have to. And again, I would pattern this probably. The polka dots or something alternating. I have this one where I did use it. This is kind of a similar house to the one we're making now. These would just be glued on there. You don't have to use it. It's just an extra piece. Also, another thing I thought about doing is, you know, depending on the season and what you're making these for, you could make these a Christmas, Valentine's, Easter. It just depends on whatever patterns you're using. But I thought it would be really nice at Christmas to use some different greenery on there. I mean, this part of it is just kind of playing with whatever you like to do. Right now, this is the entirety of the file, but I can see adding to this file. I definitely would like to make some houses, so I'm sure I'm going to make some companion packs to go with it, maybe with some different holiday pieces. But for right now, that is about it. And if you have any questions, just reach out. I'm happy to answer them. But I hope this was helpful, and I really hope you enjoy creating with this file.